Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I don't know why that first couple of seconds of that intro, and then I'm like, oh, okay, gets my heart racing for a couple of seconds. Happy Friday, everybody. Oh my gosh, it's almost Labor Day weekend. Where the heck did the summer go? It's been crazy, right? End of August here, heading into the fall, right? I can't believe that it is the end of August already. Man, did the summer fly by. But what a summer it's been here. Um, Sort of wrapping down the summer, heading into fall, getting into one of, I would say, one of probably Ryan's favorite subjects, right? Hardening the endpoint. But before we dive in, Mr. Seymour, how are you? Say hello, my friend.
Yeah, doing well, doing well. Yeah, I don't know if you're in Australia or some other space, but it's Thursday where I'm at, Tim. So I'm a little jealous. But we are quickly heading into Friday here and to a long weekend with Labor Day ahead. So
Did
super
I
excited.
jump an extra day ahead?
I think you did, man. That's okay. It's been a fast, busy week. But yeah, no, happy to be back here with you guys. Looking forward to the topic today, and good to be here.
I can't believe I already gained 24 hours. How about you, Mr. Blakely?
I'm well rooted in Thursday today, but I did catch that. But I'm all aboard on happy thoughts and happy vibes, and so I'll go with it. But no, the year has flown by. It seems like as time progresses and new technologies come in, um, we're still fighting the same problems year after year after year, right? And I think that's what's going to be exciting about the topic today is endpoints. Endpoints have been around for a very long time, and we still have the same basic challenges and issues today that we had 20 years ago, right? And so as we look at time and things passing quickly, which the time does, it's too bad we can't get ahead of some of these issues that keep plaguing us year after year after year. And so that's why I think today's topic will be real fun to talk about.
I mean, what is an endpoint? As I sit here looking at my desk and trying to determine, yeah, I mean, I have my laptop over there. I mean, I guess that is an endpoint, but could one of these be an endpoint? Any one of these, like four cell phones as they sit here on my desk, right? Is this the new endpoint, right? Is that phone sitting there? Is the tablet over there? Is this laptop? What is an endpoint nowadays, right? Brian, you mentioned 30 plus years of endpoints of laptops, desktops, servers, mainframes sitting in the basement, right? I think as we kind of dive a little deeper into this conversation and hardening these things down, right? Just about anything nowadays can be an endpoint, right? Even something as small as this little hard drive sitting on my computer on my desk here. Brian, you know this way better than we do, right? Because you kind of deal with scanning these endpoints, right? Something as big as the cloud can be an endpoint, right? Tell us a little bit about the evolution of these things, Ryan, and where we are and what we deal with them.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Tim. Endpoints are everywhere. They're showing up in all form factors, sizes, technologies, operating systems, right? We're seeing them everywhere. The landscape is changing, rapidly. I think every year we're seeing new equipment, new technologies, new softwares, right? And so ever expanding attack surfaces is what I like to call it, right? The endpoints, every organization has them, but they're not always managed properly. And I think the big thing for me that comes to mind when we talk about endpoints is hardening those endpoints, right? So, what does that actually mean? Hardening an endpoint, right? How do you harden it? Besides sticking a shell around it, right? That's what comes to mind. But no, thinking about hardening an endpoint, the basics for me, it's very simple. You have a baseline for your operating system, your browsers, and core services, right? Those three things are so important, and I think often they're overlooked. I also want to use the word least privilege because I think least privilege needs to be default state of mind. where we're removing local admin rights, and we're not giving too much permission on our devices, which we all tend to just like to throw admin rights around. And then lastly, I'll leave off on prioritizing remediations around those endpoints, right? Not just again point and clicking at severities, looking at scores, but really looking at risk to the business, right? How does that tie into the risk to the business? What do we want to remediate? So I think there's a lot to explore here. Everybody looks at hardening a little different, so it'd be interesting to share some of our views in the world of what does hardening actually mean. What can we do now, right, to start practicing those things? I'll turn that over to Brian for his interpretation.
Well, Tim, I'd love to get maybe into some intros, and then we can get into the topic and the flow today.
Yeah. Mr. Blakely, since you brought it up, say hi. Totally skipped that. I skipped that in the beginning.
Yeah, no worries. As Chief Risk Officer here at Compliance Scorecard, my focus has always been on aligning technology with policy in ways that reduce real business risk, right? What I've learned over the years is that compliance and security aren't just check boxes. We talk about that a lot, right? They're not just check boxes, they're trust signals for your clients. And when MSPs show how they can bridge that gap between technical controls and executive priorities and initiatives, you become more than an IT provider, right? You become strategic partners. And that's the mindset, I hope to bring in today's endpoint hardening discussion.
I suppose I should say, hi, everybody. Tim Golden, founder, CEO of Compliance Scorecard, where we help you, the MSP, have that risk conversation with your customer.
Yeah, and Ryan Seymour here, VP Consulting Education at ConnectSecure. My job is to work in and around our MSP partners and turn tools into services through our education at ConnectSecure. And again, the core of what we do is vulnerability management. So endpoints really hits home for us, and so that's the heart of what we're doing here. So glad to be here with everybody. We're flying around today, Tim, just skipping days, skipping intros. We're just all over it. We're ready to get that weekend started.
I just want it to be Friday. My daughter is up at the lake already, and she sent me a picture of the grandbabies playing in the water, and I'm like, I just want to be at the lake playing in the water with the grandbabies, but I have a whole nother day. So I think, my old school's going to come back out, like endpoint hardening. I'm going to go back to the days of STIGs and group policy objects and writing, batch scripts, right? I'm going to really date myself, and creating these things in GPOs to write the little script that pops up the login banner that says you can't log into this computer unless you agree to the terms and conditions, right? Who remembers those days?
I remember those.
Yeah. Now we have like SaaS apps that can do that stuff and check. Wait, I think ConnectSecure can actually check if those things exist now, right? Not just exist, but kind of probably maybe even monitor some of those things if they exist in GPOs and getting into the registry settings and editing all of that. All the way back to like Windows XP and dealing with all of that stuff and small business server.
Yes. Wow. I ain't heard that in a while.
Right. I mean, I remember having to write these scripts back in the day, like hand punching in Notepad, having like, what the heck is the GPO object to lock this stuff down, right? Having to find those keys in the registry to make sure you're actually making sure and heaven forbid you get the hex wrong. To be able to lock these things down, right? And actually, editing that registry hive appropriately. And then, God forbid, you mass deploy them across thousands of devices incorrectly. Oof, been there. But it gets way more deeper than that, right? Like, why do we do those things?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Tim, as you're sharing that, and as Ryan shared a little bit at the beginning, I think from a CISO perspective, if we look at endpoint hardening is kind of where I believe theory starts to meet reality. It's one thing to know about like vulnerabilities, right, Ryan? But it's another to kind of consistently enforce controls across every device. So many times MSPs, and this is something Ryan brought up, but so many times MSPs skip configuration baselines, right? Things like removing local admin rights. That's something you brought up, Ryan, right? And enabling right, proper logging, enforcing application control, because they seem like tedious or disruptive, or the client pushes back because it creates friction in how they operate. But that's exactly where attackers historically, I think, slip in, and endpoints are usually misconfigured. I think not because MSPs don't care, but because the process hasn't been standardized, right? Or configuration is allowed to drift. You mentioned it, Ryan, about baselining, right? It'll get a baseline and then monitor how that drifts. And if you're allowing it to drift, it gets disconnected, right, from change management and some of these other principles. So my message here, I think, is probably pretty simple, right? Consistency beats complexity. If you can demonstrate to a client that every laptop follows a known hardened baseline, you move from this firefighting, I think, to more resilience, right? And that's the kind of discipline, I think, that'll earn long-term trust for clients with their, for MSPs with their clients.
Yeah. Yeah. Nicely said, Brian. As I think about that for the MSPs we support and talk to every week, you know, you nailed it. I kind of want to dovetail off of your momentum on drift, because I think a lot of what we're talking about is endpoint drift. That's where we lose the hardening portion of our endpoints, is when our standard is being deviated from. So as an MSP, you have to establish what is acceptable in terms of a standard. What's the minimum baseline that I'll accept? Because again, MSPs, we're taking risk liability on the configurations of our customer's environment, right? Whatever vulnerabilities come with that, you've inherited that risk. You're in the supply chain. You're going to be held responsible for some portion of this. So it's best to get in early, establish that baseline. And yeah, if you're a Connect Secure partner out here, you can use Connect Secure to check your baselines. You can use Connect Secure to check your baselines. And I'm going to give you an example of what do I mean by that. When I say check your baseline, I say, okay, in this environment, the services and the software that's running in these environments, I know that I have to have my RMM agent installed. I know that I need my antivirus installed. Some of you might even deploy EDR and MDR and other network mapping. Some of you even go up to the top and hit SIM and other tools. You got to look at the MSP and say, what is my tool stack? And is it installed on every endpoint across the environment? And you got to monitor that stuff, right? How many times do our customers walk into the environment with a brand new widget or a brand new phone? Tim's got 5 on his desk, right? And connect to our stuff.
4.
Yeah, okay, 4, 5, fair enough. But you know, any of these times, especially like back to school time, this time of the year, lots of new laptops floating around out there. I also noticed around holiday time, Christmas time, New Year's time, our customers get new devices. People bring stuff into networks, got a brand new iPad. I want to get this thing on the network. Those are where drift happens, because we know, looking at threat intel, speed kills, right? Initial access is one thing, but lateral movement happens in minutes. And that's where you're going to get burned, is by lateral movement to other devices that are not secure. That's generally what we see. If you kind of work through these attacks that have happened and we look at the post-mortem, it's initial access, got to a device, we move lateral, insecure devices, now I'm in and I'm doing what I want. So that's a big thing for me, is get the baseline established and then continuously check it every day and bring those alerts to your teams so that you can close down that drift immediately, because again, speed kills and in this business right now.
I have 2 anecdotal stories. One is real quick, but one is well, they're both real world. The first is, you mentioned holidays. Worked for an organization, very large, 150 plus people. They thought it was a great idea for Christmas. First year of the Apple iPod. They thought it was a really great idea to buy everybody in the company Apple iPods. What they didn't think was they now set a precedence that everybody in the company now had to install Apple iTunes, which also then installed backing up all of those iTunes to everybody's computer, which also then set the precedence of taking all of those music files that auto backed up every MP3 to the file server. And they started to wonder why the file server crashed. The 150 people, their entire iTunes to the server that only had limited disk space, instantly filled the server, crashed the machine. So what I'm getting at is, Brian, you made the point. Hey, new devices show up. All the little ramifications all the way up and down the chain. Back to, why do we harden the endpoint? Why do we set a baseline if we have a standardized set of hardware, software, approved software list, approved SaaS list, approved baselines? Maybe if they had had a conversation with IT ahead of the time, IT would have been able to recognize, hey, these things back up to the server. The server doesn't have enough disk space. Wait a minute. Great idea to give gifts to the employees, but this is the downstream effect. Right? Brian, as the CISO, probably would have been able to recognize, hey, in talking with IT, the devices get backed up to the server's got limited disk space. You're going to add terabytes of space of backing these things up. The little things like, oh my God, that's a great idea. Here's the downstream effect. Right? Us as the IT professionals working with our customers, amazing idea. You should reward your employees. Awesome, buying them a gift. Here's the downstream effect. You are now outside your normal baseline. Same could be true in any security configuration. Same could be true with, hey, that device, it's not locked down, it's not hardened, it's full-blown permissions, blah, 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 up and down the chain. Having somebody in the corner like a CISO, like an MSP, like somebody that understands the tech stack all the way down through that chain. A 10-minute conversation could have saved the entire company going down because your server just crashed. Great idea, led to ramifications on the other side.
That's why you got to be checking the environment regularly, so we can see that stuff happening.
And also, like we've talked about, baseline, right? Baseline settings. If there's a change to that should invoke your change management. And in change management, there's a request for change, and then several different people review that change and then approve it. And having, like Tim said, in that immediate change management step, enough people weigh in and see it from different perspectives and can offer, hey, we can do that, but we need to consider this, or here's the controls that we need to implement to make that execution, right? Like Tim said, great idea, bad execution. And it was just a failure in governance across change management at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Oh, and it happened several times over several years, by the way. Mm-hmm. They didn't learn the lesson once, but they learned it after the fourth or fifth time. Just saying.
I want to add just one more comment, because we've all been saying the word baseline like over and over. Baseline.
That was my second story.
I want to I think I might have said it too many times, but I want to clarify baseline, because I think there's two types of baseline. Baseline, I think of two of them. One of them is the MSP's tool stack, which the MSPs all here, you should know what your baseline is, right? I can't tell you what that is. You're going to hopefully be able to tell me. I think the other set of baselines that you have to decide on is getting your organization aligned to a framework when we talk about secure configurations. I'm not just talking about what tools and software, I'm talking about the configuration of said tools and software. So that's where I would start to lean into our industry. And again, I'm just going to use CIS controls. If you
And
don't
benchmarks.
yeah, CIS benchmarks. If you're not sure what a proper baseline looks like, CIS has done some really great research for us and published it for MSPs out there to look at. I would use that as a great starting point if you don't have a baseline established, because if you start there, you're going to be covering, the majority of all the real easy, low-hanging fruit. You're just going to cover it.
100%. Even if you deploy as infrastructure as code, Terraform, something like that, you can build these scripts in that adhere to CIS benchmarks. Yep.
Yeah. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, but I would always recommend that you align yourself to one of those industry standards that has proven reliability and defensible security. Defensible being the key word here, right? Not just best effort.
Can I just say, I'm just going to say it. Do you know how easy you MSPs have it nowadays? Baselines didn't exist 5, 7, 10, 12 years ago when we get into the space, Brian, right? I had to Google didn't even exist. I started going through NIST 853 and the word baseline, security base, it was everywhere. But these things didn't exist. We had to figure this crap out on our own. Now you just type into the old Claude and the GPTs, I need a baseline, and poof, here you go. You guys got it so easy. Stop complaining. Go to CIS and grab the damn baseline. Yep. Right?
And make images, right? I think I say this all the time. Create gold images out there. MSPs, you ship machines. Your customers buy machines from you. There's nothing worse than sending out a machine that's not hardened.
You can buy them nowadays, pre-manufactured from Dell, Lenovo, from all the places, hardened already from the gate.
Yep. Yeah. Give them your image, right? Go into your environments. What does good look like? Mm-hmm. That's another good question, right? What does good look like? What does a hardened machine look like? Because I think for each MSP, it could look slightly different depending on the markets they're serving, the customers they're serving, the industries they're in. You may see a little, flashes of differences, but I would say the majority of this stuff kind of cross-pollinates each other, and secure config is not some random sequence that is unique to every, industry. So again, man, use what's out there and get your stuff aligned to it. It's the easiest thing we can do. One of the easiest things we can do.
Yeah, there was a comment that just came in. I'm trying to understand. Offensive strategies with endpoint hardening might be controversial topic, but I don't think it's a controversial topic. I think it hardening the endpoint is imperative.
Yeah, it's a duty. It's a duty of ours as the MSP. If we're selling machines to customers, mm-hmm. I would want to, sell them a machine that's fully secured and ready to go out of the box with all the safety features turned on, essentially.
You can't sell a car nowadays without seatbelt, right? Would you sell a computer to a customer that wasn't locked down? I don't know. I just don't think that's good business practice.
Yeah, my question is why isn't that already happening? Why isn't it ubiquitous with the industry already? It's they give us all these wonderful controls and security features, but then, they don't turn most of them on for us by default. And it's we're still having that conversation, still to this day. So yeah.
Well, I think as Brian said in the beginning, it causes friction.
Yeah, I mean, I put in some great systems over the years in my MSP days, and it'd be great if just users didn't use it and bastardize the shit out of it and come in and have special needs, right? Everybody's a snowflake. I have to install these applications. I have to connect to this. And then you have applications that don't run without local admin. And even some of the admin on demand and some of these other applications have a hard time just because the way some of the software is written. And then everybody has their own special use case. And hey, my old machine, I used to be able to do this, this, and this, and I can't get my work done because this. And people go in and we want to help people and be accommodating, and we make changes without understanding the holes this create, or even not just security issues, but sometimes support issues as well. When everything becomes a snowflake, it becomes very difficult to scale and support.
Yep. So we're coming down to about the last 5 minutes, and I'm still pushing that it's Friday. And, as I like to try to make sure, MSPs kind of enter this conversation and wind up leaving this conversation with some kind of key takeaway. With the last 4 to 5 minutes here, Mr. Blakely, what would be a key takeaway for you as we start to think about endpoint hardening as an MSP?
Yeah, we've talked about the major points, but I think as we close, I want to leave MSPs, I think, with a practical or pragmatic call to action, right? Use baseline templates and even a configuration checklist, right? Better than nothing. But these tools aren't paperwork, okay? They're kind of your safety net. And every time a device drifts from the standard, from that baseline we've been talking about, that should be your early warning system telling you risk is rising, right? Measure and report on configuration drift. I think the MSPs who succeed aren't going to be those who respond the fastest. They're the ones who prevent the fire from starting in the first place, right? That's why your clients hired you. Prevention, consistency, and visibility. I think those are the pillars of modern endpoint security. And if you operationalize those three, right, the prevention, consistency, and visibility, if you put those into operations, you don't just protect devices, you protect the client trust, the revenue, and the resilience.
Awesome. Mr. Seymour, my friend.
Yeah, so I would, again, I think it's important enough to just rehammer MSPs, establish your baselines, right? What does a baseline look like for you? Monitor drift, report on it. Secondly, I would say enforce least privilege everywhere and always. Don't accept local admin rights. Don't accept people saying I have to have this for this reason. And if they do, I would make sure it's documented. Make sure you protect yourself at some level from that, and not allow it to go through. And then I would say thirdly, prioritize your remediations. So when you see drift happening, when you see configs coming out, prioritize getting them fixed. Right? Don't let them sit around, because again, I think that's the fuel for the fires. That's the difference between an intrusion becoming an incident. Right? That could be the difference. It's having secure config on your devices and not letting drift happen. So that would be my takeaway for everybody.
Good stuff. If I had to think of a takeaway when I start thinking about endpoint hardening, locking down devices, Brian mentioned friction. There's a lot of things that come to mind, and having to deal with this in a real world environment from end user perspective, from a compliance and a risk perspective, I always go back to the why and the business outcomes. Having lived through that, having been Big Bad Tim, Mr. No guy, Mr. I'm going to lock the hammer down, Mr. having people yell and swear at my door, literally living through that, I'm going to go all the way back to start with why. Start with the business outcomes. Start with the conversation of, hey, we're going to lock stuff down, but here's why. Here's why we're doing this, so that we get the buy-in from the people that it affects every day, to kind of reduce that friction, to let them know that, yeah, I'm not here to, Mr. Banhammer, but I'm here to not just protect the business, but to keep you employed, to protect the data, to protect that contract, to protect your job and the work that we're trying to do here. I'm going to start with why. I'm going to start with letting you know that this is why we can't just give you admin rights. We can't just install stuff willy-nilly. You can't just run down the street, pop in a disk drive, and pretend like nothing's happening. We're going to have the why conversation first. And then I'm going to start locking shit down, and you're not going to be able to do stuff, but at least you'll understand why we're doing this. And everybody along the way will be a little bit safer, right? So we're going to start with why. So, hey, everybody, we're so glad that you can have an opportunity to come in here, maybe get a little more thoughts, maybe help protect some revenue, see why this risk can lead to some of that revenue protection. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. Tomorrow is Friday of a holiday weekend. Ryan or Brian, any last thoughts before I kick us all out and pray it's Friday of a holiday weekend?
No, I think we wrapped up nicely. I just want to acknowledge Courtney's nice message there. I saw he dropped some really nice text there. So I agree. If you take that and run with it today, we've left a golden nugget for everybody. So
let's see. Planning defense. Sorry. Yeah, I know. I'm like, Courtney, I wish I had seen this a couple seconds sooner.
Oh, no worries. Just want to acknowledge it. I thought it was a nice call out. So again, as long as the MSPs here are doing something about it and thinking through some strategy, I think that's step one. And then use the resources out there. Reach out to Tim, to Brian, to myself. I love to have conversations beyond these webinars. So if there's any interest out there to continue on or go a little bit further, reach out. Let us know how we can help. That's what I'm here to do. So I'll leave that and wish everyone a great long weekend ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Do the likey, the scribey. We're on the podcasts, all over the podcast stuff. If you want to listen on the go while you're in that, holiday weekend traffic, you can listen on all your favorite podcast players. Head on over to mspthoughtleadership.com and listen away. Thanks, everybody. Have a great holiday weekend.
Al.
Subscribe now.